likes to skate. Jesus is the best skater.
And I don't have to act my age. And by not acting my age, I don't have to deal with the reality that was my past. I don't have to think about adult stuff. I still drink coffee and drive a car, right? Even my tractor, but I still drive the tractor as a little kid. I drive my car as a little kid.
A 52-year-old father of 7 who now self-identifies as a 6-year-old girl. What do you think of that?
Man, I think it's interesting.
I've actually never heard of someone identifying as a different age.
I guess I shouldn't, judge, because everybody, has their own, identity and stuff.
How many genders are there?
It's like 5.
How many genders are there?
Mano Shevitz. 1, 2.
As many as want to be defined?
I think that gender is fluid, so if you want to use a bathroom because that's a place and that's a space where you feel comfortable and safe in doing so, then I think that that's completely fine.
I think that if whoever you think you are, if you're male or female, then that's the bathroom you should go into.
Whether you identify as male or female and whether your sex at birth is matching to that, you should be able to utilize the resources.
So if I told you that I was a woman, what would your response be?
Good for you. Okay, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
I'd be like, what? Really?
I don't have a problem with it.
I'd ask you how you came to that conclusion.
Oh my God. I feel like a guy for the past 3 days.
Coming into terms with my gender queer identity has been one of the most challenging but also rewarding things that I've done.
In my opinion, gender is a universe. It is a broad spectrum of planets and stars and sky that truly cannot be contained into a binary.
Take 2. My name is Em, I'm 18 years old, and I identify as non-binary.
Back in my day, we had girls and boys. Now we have girls, boys, boys, boy girls, girls and goys.
If I told you that I was Chinese, what would your response be?
I mean, I might be a little surprised, but I would say, good for you. Yeah, be who you are.
I would maybe think you had some Chinese ancestor.
I would ask you how you similarly came to that conclusion and why you came to that conclusion.
I would have a lot of questions just because on the outside I would assume that you're a white man.
Everyone who isn't strictly male or female is non-binary to one extent or another. Whether they're cisgender, agender, bigender, trigender, polygender, gray gender, gender fluid, or any of the many, 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 many more I didn't mention.
In human anatomy class, how many fingers are you taught human beings have?
We're told typically that people have 10, however there are people born with 11
But you're
fingers.
taught 10, right?
Yeah.
So we don't teach people there are people born with 11 fingers, there are people born with 12 fingers.
Mm-hmm.
I would wager that everyone here has been taught, yeah, human beings have 10 fingers, of course there are anomalies. That's the same way that we treat intersex, or these, as you said, you mentioned chromosomes, genetic abnormalities that are a very extreme case. So I think what we need to do is remove this extreme case with sex, just as we would with how many fingers, toes, how many kidneys you have, how many feet you have. There's something that's typical, there's something that's atypical. So how many genders are there?
You can't put a number on the number of genders because everyone uses different words to classify themselves.
I probably identified as genderqueer for about a year, and then I just had this epiphany, woo, you're trans, you're a guy.
And so when I came today, I want to wear this dress because I love this style. I love the fact that they have skater dresses now and stuff like that. So I have access to really pretty clothes.
The quintessential response of any social justice warrior who's just been confronted with the only two sexes, therefore only two genders argument is to bring up intersex people. They'll bring up intersex individuals as cases of someone not being biologically male or female. And if someone isn't biologically male or female, how can their gender be male or female? So therefore, non-binary genders must be totally real and legit, right? I mean, it's science. The first thing I think it's really important to understand here is that we cannot define human biological norms based on aberrations or deformities. And I know both of those words have very strong and very negative connotations, but I don't mean them that way. But plainly put, someone who was born intersex does have a birth abnormality, a birth defect. It's just not the norm. And so when making generalizations about our species, just like we don't say that humans can either have 2 arms or 3 arms and both of them are equally normal, because hey, some people people are born with 3 arms. We also don't say that there are more than 2 genders just because some people, an extremely small fraction of the population, is born intersex.
Is there a difference in your mind between men and women?
No, yes. I mean,
Possibly
And how do you know the difference between men and women?
by what people think they are. So you can't like judge someone just on like their looks.
I don't think there's any one way to really distinguish between a man or a woman, and I don't think it's necessary.
Intersex conditions include things like having a large clitoris. And I'm sorry, but if you have a clitoris, you're female. And similarly, someone with a micropenis would also be described as being intersex. But again, you have a penis. You are a man. In short, I feel like intersex is treated like this holy grail by these activists who are trying to convince people that non-binary or non-traditional genders have a basis in biology, but they really don't. Intersex individuals will still, by and large, choose to live their lives as either men or women. And honestly, it's interesting to me how many SJWs will bring up intersex as a reason why their non-binary gender identity is legitimate, when as far as I know, not a single one of them is actually intersex.
Do you think the difference between men and women matters for any reason?
No, not really.
No, I don't think it should matter.
Then is there a reason to have those labels, male or female?
I don't think so. There is kind of a difference, but at the same time, if someone wants to identify as one or both or as nothing, I also find that completely okay. And
What would you say I am?
Just judging off of your looks, I would say that you're a male. I would probably assume a man, but then you never know.
A male.
Why would you say that?
Based on how I look at you.
Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah, probably.
How many genders are there?
I don't know. I just got here.
Oh God, I can think of at least 4 or 5.
1.
A million. I don't know, a lot.
How many genders are there?
32.
32. Where do you get that number from?
For LGBT.
I mean, I don't mean to pick on anybody, but I see a lot of young girls today identifying as non-binary genders based on things like not liking dresses, or not wanting to be a princess, or not liking pink, and things like that. Basically superficial things like personal preferences and fashion choices, as if those comprised your gender. If you're a girl who hates being feminine and hates makeup and doesn't wear dresses and only wears pants, that's fine. I have no issues with that. But I'm not gonna call you they or non-binary. I'm just gonna call you a tomboy.
What does it mean to be gender non-binary?
Sure. Well, for me, it means that I don't really identify as a man or a woman. It's somewhere in the middle, but where in the middle depends on the day. Some days I err more towards the feminine side, or I like to present more femininely. But there are other days where I fall more in the middle and I'm a little more on the androgynous side. Like, for example, today I have men's pants on, but I also have my hair and makeup done. So it's kind of finding a way to exist outside the binary and really have fun with the performative aspects of gender.
We are here today to call out, as you're all aware, Jordan B. Peterson for his refusal to respect the pronouns of his transgender students.
Do you think that the professor should be fired for saying he doesn't want to use pronouns, or that he should be removed from his position?
Well, I think we should talk to him, and maybe if he met me or like anyone else like us and we had a talk, he could see like where we're coming from.
So I'm genderqueer, and lately I've been exploring the idea of identifying as trans. Today's episode is about pronouns. I don't want to spend all my time correcting people when they get my gender wrong, because it's not my responsibility, it's yours.
Pronouns are the things we use to refer to people in the third person that aren't their names. They're also often used as the linguistic representation of people's gender identities. So, they're really important. Really, really, really important.
My pronouns are not preferred. They're not a preference. They are mandatory for interaction with me. Change your language. Like, no one is female-bodied, no one is born a girl, no one is any of that. Like, we are assigned genders at birth by doctors who look at us and see certain types of genitalia and decide what our identity will be from there on out.
Language is a reflection of standards that we have as a society. Are doctors sexist?
I think some doctors are sexist.
Are doctors transphobic if they refer to their patients who have a penis and they come in for a prostate exam as a male? Is that doctor hate speaking? Is that an act of aggression?
I think if that doctor misgenders their patient, then yeah, they are being transphobic.
Just because I may present more femme doesn't mean that I'm any less they, them.
My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and that's a non-negotiable. Misgendering a trans person is an act of violence.
What pronoun should I use?
You should use they, them pronouns. So you saying that you
And what
don't
if I
believe
don't?
me,
What if I don't?
If you don't, I would consider that disrespectful, and that's actually an act of violence to misgender a trans
It's an
person,
act of
or
violence.
That is an act of violence to intentionally misgender someone, yes.
Here we come to the issue. So here's my question. Since we've now decided we don't know the number of genders, it's a spectrum. It exists. There is no set number. You've asserted the premise that we are required to use the pronouns that are preferred by the individual. We have no idea how many pronouns there are. We can never know how many pronouns there are. And to not use a proper pronoun
You could ask.
is an act of violence against them. Did you ask my pronouns before you sat down?
No, I didn't ask your pronouns because
Why?
I haven't referred to you with pronouns.
If I told you that I was 7 years old, what would your response be?
I wouldn't believe that immediately.
I probably wouldn't believe it, but I mean, it wouldn't really bother me that much to go out of my way and tell you, no, you're wrong. I'd just be like, oh, okay, he wants to say he's 7 years old.
If you feel 7 at heart, then then so be it. Yeah, good for you.
So if I wanted to enroll in a first grade class, do you think I should be allowed to?
Probably not, I guess. I mean, unless you haven't completed first grade up to this point and for some reason need to do that now.
If that's where you feel like mentally you should be, then I feel like there are communities that would accept you for that.
I would say so long as you're not hindering society and you're not causing harm to other people, I feel like that should be an okay thing.
If I identify as a 65-year-old, can I draw Social Security? If I say I feel like a Native American, do I qualify for Native scholarships? If I identify as a paraplegic, can I get one of those little handicap decals for my car? The real problem is that people don't want to deal with reality.
And I don't have to act my age. And by not acting my age, I don't have to deal with the reality that was my past.
You've mentioned that it's non-binary, but you haven't given me a number of genders and how we restructure society. You've merely pointed out that it's an act of violence to use an improper pronoun. See, I think that would have, you just talked about a societal standard. If the societal standard is using the wrong pronoun is an act of violence against somebody, I think that's an incredibly dangerous societal standard, and it's one that nobody can uphold consistently.
If I were to say, I feel black, does that make me black?
Not necessarily, it doesn't. I believe you just are what you are. I don't think you really become or be anything.
I don't think so, because that's a biological law. There should be a difference between mental state and biological appearance.
According to the New York City Commission on Human Rights, there are more than 2 genders. There's bigendered and cross-dressed, drag queen and drag king. Then there's female to male and FTM. There's also trans person, but trans person is somehow different than trans, transsexual, transsexual with the extra S, pangender, or a person of transgender experience.
So is there any limit to what somebody can self-identify as?
If you can find the resources to be the thing you want to be, you can do that.
We're not ready for that. We are just now becoming more aware of social issues in regards to how you identify.
Take a look at this young man who paid a cosmetic surgeon $50,000 to transition into becoming a Martian.
I started my journey on not wanting to have any sort of label to be male or female. I just felt very androgynous and just didn't like people labeling me, calling me all these different things and names. So my next steps would be to possibly remove my genitals, my nipples. I don't really care about whether someone's gonna like fall in love with me or not. I'm more in love with the kids and the community that freaks and to make them not feel so weird. I do not see me having any regret when I'm 70. I see myself possibly like adopting children and raising them just totally fine. I don't need sexual organs to do so, so I don't see myself regretting it, no.
Is there any part of you that thinks that maybe someday you would regret it?
Absolutely.
Okay,
with
good.
people that I've talked to, I would be crazy to be so extremist to say that. I haven't been like, what am I gonna do when I'm when I'm 60 and like something goes wrong, is this worth it?
There's also a category called gender bender. No, seriously, what's a gender bender? I Googled it. It's a person who dresses and behaves in a way characteristic of the opposite sex. Don't mean to be dense here, but how is a gender bender different from a drag king or a drag queen? It's like new math. It's so complicated.
I identify as agender, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs.
Agender. Agender means someone without any gender. Apparently being agender means you're genderless or gender challenged, or you simply don't believe in gender.
I identify as gender fluid, and my pronouns are he or she.
That moment when I found out what, there was more than two genders, I was like, everything just kind of fell into place and made sense.
Agender. Having no gender or a lack of gender identity. I mean, call me crazy, but doesn't the word itself just disprove the definition right away? Agender. You have agender, as in male or female. Does not matter what you come up with. You're not special because of a descriptor that you chose for yourself.
Not quite done yet, folks. Other gender categories include butch, third sex, and femme. Then there's androgynous and androgyne. What's the difference between androgynous and androgyne, you ask? Hey, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Now let's see now, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 29 genders for those keeping track at home.